gives us great detail about how he deals with his people. Even when they rebel against him, how much he loves them, but he won't put up with that rebellion, that open rebellion. Anything else that really stands out, what we wouldn't know?
One of the important things is we wouldn't know that man was incapable of following God and being good on his own merit.
Right, and that's a good point. And I guess I wasn't going to ask this question, but this is a good one. If you think about, forget the Old Testament, there's a lot, again, we would not know about God, about his plan, about how man got in the position that he was in or is in even today. There's a lot of encouragement in the Old Testament about people of great faith that overcame great obstacles, even though they could have easily not followed God. They continued to obey him. You think about all the great characters in the Old Testament, and again, they were, in essence, they were men and women like we are, and none of them, I don't believe, ever thought, you know what, people in thousands of years from now, they're going to be reading about me and my life. How many of them would have thought that? But yet God saw that their life and either their faith or their rebellion, in the case of some of the kings that were evil, especially for Saul in the Old Testament, that God saw those as necessary tools to be able to instruct us and to keep us on the right path and the right instruction. Yes?
One of the big arguments today is still going on, the creation of the world and man.
That's another thing, right, definitely.
Mark, if I can,
yes.
That scripture, Romans 15:4, is telling us to know our history.
Right.
And exactly what you said. We have to know our history, otherwise we know nothing.
Amen.
It's kind of like coming to the United States and not knowing the history of the United States. When was the United States founded? What are our civil rights? Those things. We have to know the Old Testament. We don't live by it like you're saying, but we have to know the Old Testament.
Right, and I think we made this point before in a class or two, that I think up to a third of the New Testament is actually either quotations from the old prophecies from the Old Testament or contain information from the Old Testament, up to a third. So that's how important the Old Testament is. And again, it's bigger and I guess more pages and more to read than the New, but it's something we should delve into and want to learn more about. And hopefully we can do that in our life. Yes, David.
It's like you learn how to not repeat yourself. Right? Read that Old Testament. If you didn't have something back to go to, how would you know what to avoid? And the Old Testament was very good at teaching, like war. You go back, you don't want to repeat yourself, right?
Right.
So the Old Testament is a good reference to go back and say, well, hey, we don't want to repeat ourselves and do the wrong things that happened in the past.
Right. Good. Thank you. Colossians 2:14. Who has that? I'm not sure which one. Okay. Go ahead.
By canceling the record of debt that stood against us with its legal demands, this he set aside, nailing it to the cross.
Okay, again, that speaks from the Old Testament to the New. But the Old Testament, again, can be our schoolmaster. We can learn from it. We need to. But again, we are not, like David said, under the Old Testament law ourselves. And a lot of ways, there's some great things that we're fortunate we are not. And I always think about what we read about last week and the sacrifices that were made and the great detail they had to go into and the thousands of animals that had to be sacrificed during under the Old Testament law. And we don't do that today. So in some ways you might say, we're not bound by that, but we're just as responsible again for following God's commands. And for those people that think, well, there are too many rules and God wants us to do too many things, for example, in worship or so forth, you could go back to the Old Testament and say, well, it didn't matter. Whatever people thought, whatever they wanted, they had to follow God's instructions.
Yes.
When it came especially to things like worship and salvation and so forth. So,
Amen.
Again, think about those, and we'll try to finish this in 2 weeks. Next week, by the way, the day before Thanksgiving, since we have a lot of families and teachers that are out, we will meet in here at 7 o'clock and have a devotional. It'll be a little longer than our usual devotional. Usually it's about 30 minutes or so. And but we encourage everybody to come next Wednesday if you're going to be here. I think Gary's giving a lesson, right, Gary? You knew that. But that'll be next Wednesday. And then we'll be back again the Wednesday after that in class. Thank you very much. Thank you.